The courtroom was already tense. Cameras were banned, but the silence inside said everything. The kind of silence that only happens when something historic is about to be said. The witness stand was occupied by someone no one expected to ever see tied to this trial. Ben Affleck. The actor walked in calm, guarded, clearly briefed. But under that polished surface was something else. A weight, not just of who he is, but of what he was about to say. As he took the oath, you could hear the rustling of jackets, the flipping of notepads. Even the judge leaned in slightly, which almost never happens. This wasn't about Hollywood anymore. This was about something deeper. Affleck's name hadn't been publicly linked to the Diddy case before, so when his subpoena was announced earlier in the week, the media brushed it off as a distraction. Just another headline. But when he sat down and began speaking, the courtroom shifted. He was there because he had knowledge of a conversation. One that allegedly happened during a private event a few years back. One that involved Diddy and Jennifer Lopez, Ben and J-Lo. Everyone knew the story, the rekindled love, the lavish wedding, the photos, the glow. But what no one outside their closest circle knew was that Ben Affleck, by his own admission, overheard something he couldn't forget. He described the night, the guests, the music, the wine, and then the voices. A hushed exchange between Diddy and Lopez in a quiet corner. Ben had stepped out for air, and according to him, was close enough to hear just enough. What he claimed next sent shockwaves through the room. He said Diddy referenced the files, something Jennifer allegedly knew existed, possibly helped hide. She asked if they were gone for good, and Diddy replied, only if nobody talks. Before we dive deeper into this unforgettable video, make sure to like the video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell icon. That way you'll never miss any new coming videos like this. Now let's get back to it. Ben Affleck's voice didn't shake, but it softened. You could see it in his eyes. He didn't want to be there, but something forced him to show up. Maybe guilt, maybe fear, maybe something more. Whatever it was, his words hit like a sledgehammer. And the courtroom listened, stunned, frozen, as the prosecution asked the one question everyone was already thinking. Mr. Affleck, do you believe Jennifer Lopez was aware of criminal actions connected to Mr. Combs? Ben paused, closed his eyes for a second, and then said, I don't know what she knew. I just know what I heard. That was all the court needed. Within an hour, the judge reviewed the transcript, conferred with the prosecution, and issued a sudden, stunning order. Jennifer Lopez was now subject to immediate investigation and potential arrest, pending further inquiry. Gasps filled the room, reporters ran out, phones exploded in the hallways, and in that single moment, this trial, already wild, already volatile, shifted into something even bigger. Because when a global pop icon's name is dragged from tabloid headlines into federal courtrooms, the story doesn't stay a scandal. It becomes a reckoning. And for the first time, the public stopped asking if Diddy would fall. They started wondering just how many others would fall with him. Outside the courtroom, it was chaos. News vans doubled, helicopters hovered overhead, reporters scrambled to verify the words everyone was now whispering like a warning. Jennifer Lopez, arrest order, linked to Diddy. On social media, disbelief turned to panic. Fans were confused, shocked, divided. Was it real? Was it misheard? Was Ben Affleck really the one who said it? But inside, things were even more surreal. The judge had not issued a full arrest warrant. Not yet. What was issued was an emergency motion for inquiry, an immediate legal directive authorizing the federal team to investigate Lopez's communications, movements, and any potential links to evidence tampering. And according to court insiders, if certain items turned up, the order would escalate. For Jennifer Lopez, the story had just shifted from pop culture to criminal court. As prosecutors explained the motion, the courtroom sat in stillness. Even Diddy, seated behind his lawyers, didn't shift. No smirk, no panic, just stillness. As if he'd known this was coming, as if he'd expected it all along. The tapes had already changed everything. Jamie Foxx's recordings, the silent witnesses, the hidden files. But now with Affleck's testimony, it wasn't just about what happened at Diddy's events. It was about who helped him make it all disappear. And the prosecutors were clear. They weren't calling Jennifer Lopez guilty. Not yet. But they were calling her involved. At least enough to warrant a full-scale inquiry. The gallery was packed with journalists, legal observers, even a few off-duty celebrities sitting in disguised rows. No one moved. No one even breathed loudly. And then the prosecutor read a section from an encrypted message. decrypted from one of the devices handed over by a former employee. The text was short, dated 3 years ago. Jay doesn't want it on her. D says it's handled. No names, just initials. But in the context of what Ben Affleck had shared, the conversation he overheard, the tone, the concern, those words felt damning. Jay doesn't want it on her. D says it's handled. Handled how? Destroyed? Moved? Hidden? No one in court had the answer yet, but the implication was like fire spreading through dry brush. Fast, ruthless, and unstoppable. Jennifer's team issued a statement within the hour, denying everything. They called the arrest speculation completely false and defamatory. But inside court, the narrative was already out of her hands. The prosecution wasn't asking the jury to decide on J-Lo's guilt. Not yet. They were painting a picture, one where the circles of power weren't just filled with silence. They were filled with protection. They showed pictures of Lopez and Diddy at galas, reunions, business events. They referenced former associates who said her name came up often when plans needed to be adjusted. They hinted that Jennifer wasn't just a bystander from a forgotten era of hip-hop romance. They were suggesting she had access, proximity, and possibly responsibility. And in the back corner of the courtroom, a young woman, part of the press team, whispered into her phone, "This is bigger than Diddy. It's the whole tower coming down." Because once you implicate a global icon like Jennifer Lopez, it's no longer about one man's fall. It's about the fall of an entire system, one where celebrity status was used as a smokescreen for dangerous truths. And somewhere, miles away, Jennifer Lopez was likely watching this unfold. Maybe from her legal office, maybe from home, maybe with Ben by her side, or maybe alone. But wherever she was, one thing had changed forever. She was no longer just a star. She was now part of the story, and the story wasn't finished yet. Jennifer Lopez had always been untouchable. For over 2 decades, she had danced above controversy, admired, adored, even worshipped. The tabloids tried, the critics poked, but nothing ever stuck. She was too big, too polished, too controlled. But this time, she wasn't walking into a red carpet. She was being pulled into a courtroom narrative that didn't care about fame. The evidence was stacking, and every piece of it seemed to circle tighter around the same unspoken question. What did she know? Inside court, prosecutors introduced a new thread. Surveillance data, no footage, since cameras were always banned from the core locations of Diddy's private events. But phone pings, geolocation tags, a timeline of devices. According to the prosecution, Jennifer Lopez's phone had pinged multiple times from Diddy's properties in the past 5 years, long after their public relationship was declared history. Most people believed they hadn't been close in ages, but the data told a different story. She was there, quietly, briefly, strategically. One location showed her phone inside a gated Los Angeles mansion for just 43 minutes, on a night where, according to internal emails, encrypted drives were allegedly moved to an unknown site. It could be coincidence. It could be nothing. But the court wasn't treating it that way. They introduced testimony from a logistics driver who used to work for a company that handled discreet overnight transfers for VIP clients, documents, electronics, and personal valuables. The man was subpoenaed anonymously. He wasn't sure who he had been working for, but he remembered one job well. "I picked up 2 black cases, no labels. I was told not to speak. The woman handed it over. She was wearing sunglasses, even indoors." The prosecution showed him a photo of Lopez from that same week. He hesitated, then nodded. "I'm not saying it was her, but it looks a lot like her." Circumstantial? Yes. Coincidental? Possibly. But in this trial, those lines were blurring fast. Because it wasn't just about a woman at the wrong place at the wrong time. It was about the culture, the way people protected each other, covered for each other, smiled together in public while handling secrets in private. And then came the second revelation, a deleted voicemail, recovered from a phone owned by a former Diddy employee who had turned over their device in exchange for legal immunity. The voicemail was recovered by digital forensics, partially distorted but audible. "Tell Jay it's done. She won't be connected." That was it. Just that. No names, no context. But everyone in the room knew what they were hearing. Jay again, and this time she wasn't just close to the fire. She was being described as someone to shield from it. The defense objected, arguing that Jay could be anyone. The judge allowed the jury to hear it with a disclaimer, but the damage had already been done. Jennifer Lopez had gone from icon to shadow figure. Not by what she did, but by how much she might have known and kept buried. The gallery buzzed with energy now. Every glance, every breath in the courtroom carried weight. There was no proof yet, no smoking gun, but the accumulation was impossible to ignore. Diddy, sitting in his chair, still hadn't reacted. Not once. Not even when Jennifer's name was spoken aloud again and again. Some said that meant he was calm, others said it meant he was finished. And Ben Affleck? He wasn't in the room today, but his shadow was. His words had opened the gate, and now everything that followed, every ping, every message, every delivery, felt like a confirmation. The judge closed the day with a statement no one had expected. We are not here to determine celebrity status. We are here to determine truth. No one is immune. With that, court was adjourned. But outside those walls, the court of public opinion was already in full session. And Jennifer Lopez, once untouchable, was now being questioned like never before. Because in a world built on silence, the only thing more dangerous than being guilty is being part of the secret. The streets outside the courthouse looked like a movie premiere. Only this time, the velvet rope was replaced with yellow tape, and the flashing cameras weren't for glamour, they were for evidence. Jennifer Lopez hadn't even been charged, but the very possibility had shaken the entertainment world to its core. Inside the courtroom, prosecutors weren't pulling punches anymore. They had established a pattern. Phone records, vague voicemails, a delivery driver's testimony, and now they were bringing context. A witness from the entertainment industry, who requested anonymity and special protection, took the stand. Their identity remained sealed, their voice disguised, but their words cut through like a razor. I worked with both of them, Diddy and J-Lo. I saw how she managed things behind the scenes. She wasn't loud, she was deliberate. She knew everything that moved, especially when it involved reputation. The courtroom listened as the witness described the culture of control, the cleanup teams, the digital specialists, the NDAs handed out like party favors, and how Jennifer Lopez was often not just aware of it, but in some cases, allegedly helped coordinate the messaging. One chilling detail emerged, the echo list, a nickname used internally by certain staff members to track who knew what and who needed to be silenced if things ever leaked. The list wasn't a spreadsheet or a formal file. It was whispers. It was coded messages and emails. But multiple people claimed Jennifer's initials had been referenced multiple times on it. And then came the video, a grainy time-stamped security recording from the side entrance of a luxury high-rise in Miami. No audio, just footage. The prosecution described it as a piece of a puzzle that shows presence, if not intent. In the video, a black SUV pulls into the underground garage. A woman steps out, hooded, sunglasses. She walks with confidence. Staff later confirmed the guest was on no record protocol, meaning no name was logged. But a forensic comparison of her gait, frame, and the outfit, cross-referenced with a photo taken hours later at a Miami gala, strongly suggested it was Jennifer Lopez. The location, one of Diddy's rumored off-grid residences. The date, 2 days before one of the major drives at the center of this trial went missing. Coincidence again, or calculated? The defense tried to dismiss it, argued it was speculative. The judge allowed it in. The jury leaned forward. And then quietly, the prosecution dropped one more breadcrumb. A private plane log. Flight records showed that Lopez's jet left Miami late that night. Onboard manifest, sealed. Destination, a private island linked to shell companies associated with Diddy's business interests. No phones, no trace, just movement. And suddenly, everyone could feel it. The weight of what was being implied. Not that Jennifer Lopez orchestrated anything, but that she knew. She knew enough to be present in places where silence was currency, where files vanished, where names weren't written down, where secrets were airtight. And through it all, the question got louder. Why? Why would a woman with global fame, money, power, and admiration risk it all? Was it loyalty? Was it leverage? Was it fear? Or had she simply been too close for too long to walk away clean? Back in the gallery, people stopped scribbling notes. They just stared at the footage, at the transcripts, at the timelines. Because by now, this trial wasn't about Diddy anymore. It was about the people who stood around him when the lights were off. The people who smiled in public but whispered in private. The ones who may not have pulled the trigger, but stood in the room while it was loaded. And Jennifer Lopez? Her name was no longer in the credits. It was in the case file. And the ending to this story was still unwritten. The silence surrounding Jennifer Lopez was beginning to crack. For days, her legal team had remained tight-lipped, issuing generic denials, attempting to frame the court's proceedings as sensationalism. But behind closed doors, everything had changed. Her publicist had canceled upcoming media appearances. Her team stopped confirming tour dates. And most telling of all, her attorneys filed an emergency motion to seal certain documents from public release. Inside the courtroom, the prosecution wasn't backing down. They brought out what they referred to as a cultural map, a visual web of connections between Diddy's operations, known associates, properties, and media handlers. At the center of it, multiple names radiated outward. And while Diddy's name was obvious, there was another, positioned nearly parallel. Jennifer Lopez. Her name wasn't the biggest, but it was the boldest, and it was circled. The prosecution walked the jury through the map. Each connection wasn't definitive proof of wrongdoing, but rather a breadcrumb, a clue, a subtle but dangerous reminder that even if she wasn't in the spotlight, she was always nearby. And then they showed the emails. Not from her directly, but from her staff. Internal communications between publicists, legal representatives, and media consultants. One line read, "If this goes south, keep Jay completely insulated. No statements, no photo access. Control the narrative." Another more chilling, "Under no circumstance should she be linked to the vault night." That phrase sent a ripple through the courtroom. The vault night. Until that moment, it had been a whispered term, a reference to the evening when Jamie Foxx's recordings were believed to have been backed up and moved. The same night, multiple devices allegedly disappeared from Diddy's compound. And now it was confirmed that not only did Lopez's team know about it, they were strategizing around it. But the most damning evidence didn't come in the form of a document or a witness. It came from Ben Affleck. Again. Not in court this time, but in a recorded deposition. A video taken just 72 hours earlier, played for the jury. In it, Affleck sat alone in a room, hands clasped, visibly tense. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't acting. He was confessing. He admitted that during the Miami trip 2 years ago, Jennifer had seemed off, preoccupied, anxious. He said she received a call from a number she took in private. When she returned, she asked him one question. "If I knew something bad, would you still protect me?" Ben looked at the camera and said, "At the time, I thought she was being emotional. Now, I'm not so sure." That one moment, raw, simple, unedited, shattered the image of Lopez as a passive bystander, because it suggested something far more dangerous. She had doubts, she had questions, and possibly she had knowledge. In the gallery, the reaction was immediate. One journalist dropped his pen. A woman in the back whispered, "Oh my God." Because if Jennifer Lopez knew something and chose to remain silent, it wasn't just about being caught in the blast radius. It was about willingly staying close to the fuse. The prosecution ended the day with no dramatic flair, no pounding on the podium, just a simple, quiet line. "We are not alleging Jennifer Lopez committed a crime. We are showing you that when powerful people share dangerous spaces, silence is a decision." And with that, court adjourned. But outside, it was no longer about silence. Protesters had begun gathering. Some defended J-Lo, chanting that she was being scapegoated. Others held signs reading, "Justice has no A-list." And Jennifer Lopez, once the queen of red carpets and love ballads, now stood at the edge of something she couldn't dance her way out of. Because secrets don't care about stardom. And in the end, silence always speaks. By the time the court resumed, something had shifted in the energy of the room. It wasn't just about tension anymore. It was about inevitability. What started as whispers had turned into records, recordings, maps, timelines, and now emotion. The kind that no legal team can redact. The prosecution returned with something unexpected. A personal journal entry. It belonged to a former employee of Diddy's, a live-in assistant who had filed anonymously for protection and who had turned over a handwritten journal that documented daily observations from inside the mansion. Most entries were mundane. Party setups, scheduling, food deliveries. But one page dated 2 years ago was flagged and submitted to the court. The journal read, "J-Lo came by today. It wasn't a public thing. No one took photos. She spoke to Diddy alone for over 40 minutes. After she left, he told me, 'She's worried. I told her she's fine as long as she remembers who protected her first.'" I don't know what that meant, but the air felt heavy that day. It was read aloud in court, and you could feel every eye land on it. A private thought, written by someone no one knew, now shaping the fate of someone everyone knew. That phrase, "she's worried," wasn't just a passing concern anymore. It was now layered over every email, every flight log, every encrypted message and private entryway. The prosecution then laid out a three-step theory. 1. Proximity. She was in the rooms, on the planes, in the calls. Second, access. Her name came up during key operations tied to media suppression and file movement. Third, fear. Confirmed by Affleck's deposition, her team's emails, and now a first-hand quote from Diddy himself. And suddenly, the courtroom wasn't thinking about glam or headlines. It was thinking about motives. Jennifer Lopez had everything to lose. A clean legacy, a billion-dollar brand, a spotless public image that transcended music, movies, fashion. Why would someone like that ever get close to something this dangerous? The answer didn't come from a prosecutor. It came from the jury's own silence. Because they were piecing it together themselves. The defense fought back with fire. They said it was all circumstantial, that Jay could refer to multiple people, that flight records don't prove intent, that staff observations are hearsay, that Affleck's comments were emotional, not factual. But none of that stopped the slow burn spreading through every row in that room. Because now, this wasn't about whether Lopez broke the law. It was about whether she knew it was being broken and chose to stay close anyway. And that's what made the next moment feel like a bomb had dropped. The judge revealed that Lopez's legal team had filed a motion earlier that morning, a request for a private, sealed meeting with the court to clarify her involvement before any official warrant was issued. In simple terms, she blinked. The icon who never flinched, never folded, was now negotiating behind closed doors before the gavel could fall. The gallery erupted. Legal commentators outside were already calling it a preemptive damage shield, or an unofficial admission that something isn't right. Inside the courtroom, the prosecution paused. They didn't smile, they didn't push. They just looked at the jury and let the silence breathe. Because the facts were no longer just facts. They were now choices. Jennifer Lopez had been there, in the shadows of powerful rooms, in the orbit of one of the most chaotic celebrity collapses in recent memory. And now she wasn't walking away untouched. Because somewhere along the way, she made the worst mistake someone in her position could make. She stayed too close for too long and thought the spotlight would keep her safe. But this courtroom, it doesn't care how many songs you've sold. It only cares about one thing, what you knew, and when you chose to stay silent. The courtroom felt heavier than it ever had. You could sense the shift, not just in the facts, but in the tone. It wasn't about building a case anymore. It was about exposing a culture where secrets were currency and silence was the most dangerous form of loyalty. The prosecution opened the session with a chilling phrase: "Not all accomplices act. Some protect by staying quiet." And with that, they introduced the next wave of evidence. Testimony from a former digital consultant who had worked briefly with Jennifer Lopez's brand team. She appeared remotely, face blurred, voice digitally altered, but her words were sharp, precise, and delivered with a clarity that didn't need theatrics. "I was hired to wipe data. That was my job. Not destroy it, relocate it, encrypt it, make it untraceable. And while I never knew the full context, one name came up repeatedly during my contract. Diddy." She paused. "And in one particular meeting, there was panic about media leaks. I was told, make sure nothing ties back to Jay. Not a text, not a timestamp, not a shadow." That came from someone on Jennifer Lopez's team. The courtroom didn't erupt. It collapsed inward. Because those weren't accusations. They were protocols, processes. Not a moment of panic, but a structured system of control. The consultant provided a digital trail, screenshots of job orders, metadata edits, geolocation scrubs. None of it illegal on its own. But when placed alongside the context of the trial, it painted a horrifying picture. Someone, or some people, were actively working to erase a timeline. And the name Jay kept showing up. The judge demanded clarification. The consultant explained how celebrity clients often use initials and internal codes to avoid direct reference. But even then, she confirmed that a J in conjunction with Diddy was mentioned often enough to raise red flags. At this point, the jury wasn't just hearing a case. They were watching a mask slip. Then came the bombshell. A confidential file, previously sealed, was now cleared for limited disclosure. It was a partial transcript of a recorded conversation between two media lawyers and an unnamed music executive. The audio was obtained through a separate ongoing federal probe, but had been deemed relevant to the current trial. In the recording, one lawyer says, "If this blows up, Jay is the only one clean enough to take heat and survive. But even she has limits. Keep her out of court. Use Affleck if we have to." No names again, but the implication? Crystal clear. There were moves being made behind the scenes to use Jennifer Lopez's clean image, not to reveal truth, but to protect a much darker machine. And even that clean image, by now, was beginning to fracture. As the recording ended, the courtroom sat in silence. No one looked at each other. Even the defense team remained still, because everyone in the room understood what they had just heard. Jennifer Lopez was not just a passive figure swept into someone else's storm. She was seen, perhaps even positioned, as a firewall. And whether she agreed to it or not, she was in the center of it now. That evening, news networks lit up. Hashtags surged. Legal analysts began rewriting the playbook. The Lopez brand, built on decades of flawless optics, was now a legal chess piece. And with every revelation, the board shifted further away from her control. One reporter tweeted, "She spent years perfecting the spotlight, but now the shadows are louder." In the court, it wasn't finished, because the next session promised to reveal the real question that had haunted the jury since Affleck took the stand. Was Jennifer Lopez protecting herself, or protecting something she helped build? As the courtroom doors swung open the next morning, the entire building felt different. The buzz wasn't just legal anymore. It was cultural. It was generational. It was the moment when millions of people around the world had to ask themselves a question they never imagined. What if everything we believed about Jennifer Lopez wasn't the full story? Inside, the prosecution was now holding nothing back. They began by bringing in someone no one expected, a former producer tied to a now-defunct music label once affiliated with both Diddy and J-Lo in the early 2000s. His name had never been in the tabloids, never attached to the glitz, but he had been in the rooms, the real rooms, the ones where NDAs were signed before the guests even removed their coats. He sat down, took a deep breath, and began. "There's a difference between being in the industry," he said, "and being in the inner room. Jennifer wasn't just a performer, she was part of the architecture." That line landed like a hammer. He described moments when legal risks were discussed behind closed doors, moments involving settlements, hidden footage, silencing ex-staff, and rewriting timelines. And while he didn't accuse her directly of orchestrating those moves, he said something that made the jury lean forward. She was always in the know, always, and nothing, absolutely nothing, happened around Diddy without her knowing when she was in his orbit. He was careful, deliberate, and coldly factual. He didn't offer drama, he offered receipts, date-logged emails from her management team, schedules that matched secret meetings, financial movements between shell companies that just happened to align with key disappearances of media assets from Diddy's properties. And then he dropped the name of a storage unit, a name no one had heard before, a location in New Jersey registered under a holding company now inactive. He said he had been there once. Only once, he repeated, to drop off 2 sealed crates. He didn't open them, but the delivery was arranged by someone from Lopez's brand team. Within minutes, the court issued a sealed subpoena to verify its contents. But even before that could be enforced, the defense scrambled, not to deny the unit existed, but to challenge its relevance. That was their move now. Not "this didn't happen," just "this shouldn't be allowed." It was the first crack in their tone. They were no longer acting like Jennifer Lopez was above it all. Now they were trying to protect her from the fallout. And then the prosecution played one more recording, audio obtained from an off-record conversation at a celebrity gala 3 years ago. You could hear clinking glasses, soft music, and then, unmistakably, Jennifer Lopez's voice. "The only rule is, if it's ever questioned, we were never there, and nobody kept copies." There was no context, no confirmed reference to any event or crime. But in the courtroom, it wasn't about proving she orchestrated anything. It was about proving she knew the game, and she played it. The reaction outside was immediate. Even longtime supporters of J-Lo began asking uncomfortable questions. Editorials shifted from, "Could she be innocent?" to "How long did she know?" And inside the courtroom, you could feel the weight on the jury. The illusion had shattered. The shine was gone. All that remained was the question that no one wanted to ask out loud, but everyone was thinking, how many people did she help protect by saying nothing at all? The judge ended the session with a firm statement. This is not about fame. This is about truth. And even silence, when consistent, strategic, and repeated, can become a form of participation. Jennifer Lopez was not on trial, not yet, but her silence, her access, her decisions, They were. And the walls around her perfectly curated world were crumbling, one quiet revelation at a time. The courtroom was packed wall to wall. Even without cameras, the world was watching. Outside, streets were barricaded, and helicopters hovered like vultures over a battlefield. But inside, everyone's eyes were locked on a single empty chair. Jennifer Lopez's. She hadn't appeared yet. Not publicly, not in person. Only through lawyers and carefully worded statements. But today, rumors were swirling that something was changing. That the judge had requested her presence. That her legal team had run out of shields. The prosecution wasn't waiting. They came armed with their most organized, most surgical presentation to date. A comprehensive timeline. A literal wall, digitally projected, mapping out everything from the moment the first whistleblower came forward to the final day Ben Affleck testified. Every pin, every phone ping, every piece of email metadata, and Jennifer Lopez's movements, they lined up with almost every key moment in the case. The night Jamie Foxx's first tape was allegedly transferred, she was there. The weekend Diddy's internal server logs went mysteriously blank. Her team flew in. The gala where the hidden audio captured her voice, she was seated at Diddy's table. The defense tried to break the momentum by objecting, saying none of this proved intent. But the judge wasn't buying it, not anymore. Because now the court wasn't asking, did Jennifer Lopez break the law? They were asking, did Jennifer Lopez help someone else hide that they did? And then, the revelation no one saw coming, the backup vault. Until now, all discussion had been about missing drives, corrupted files, and erased footage. But buried in a new forensic report was something else. A mirrored drive, found months ago during a separate raid in an unrelated case. Initially thought to be junk data, a new analysis revealed otherwise. It held fragments of footage, encrypted, but partially recovered. And in one of those clips, a woman's voice is heard. Calm, director, strategic. What happens in that room stays sealed. Everyone knows the rules. If you don't like it, leave. They didn't confirm it was Lopez, but they didn't have to. The voice pattern was submitted to audio experts. The phrasing matched prior transcripts. And the people in that room, including a known media manager who was subpoenaed days ago, admitted Lopez was present. Suddenly, it wasn't about the words anymore. It was about how often she said nothing when it mattered most. And as the court broke for recess, phones vibrated simultaneously across the gallery. Reporters gasped. One turned and shouted, not at the court, but into his camera crew. She's coming. Jennifer Lopez is coming. The news hit like lightning. Her attorneys had confirmed it. She would appear in court the next day. Not to testify, not yet, but to be seen. And just like that, the trial took a turn no one could have predicted. Because this wasn't just about celebrity anymore. This wasn't even about Diddy. This was about power. The kind of power that smiles for cameras while doors close behind it. The kind of power that never gets questioned until now. For decades, Jennifer Lopez had been the one thing every scandal couldn't touch. She was the escape route, the clean slate, the brand that never cracked. But when she walks into that courtroom tomorrow, she won't be wearing designer gowns or walking to applause. She'll be walking into a storm of her own making, built not from what she did, but from what she chose not to stop. The door opened slowly, and for a moment, the world stood still. Jennifer Lopez walked into the courtroom with no entourage, no glam squad, no curated glow. Just a black suit, a pale expression, and the kind of silence that screamed louder than any headline. Every seat was filled. The gallery was breathless. Even the judge paused, letting the moment settle before speaking. She sat next to her attorneys, eyes forward, unblinking. The image, Jennifer Lopez, not on stage, not on set, but in court, was one the public had never imagined. And yet here she was. Not because she was forced, not yet, but because her silence had finally summoned the storm. The prosecution didn't dramatize her presence. They didn't raise their voice. They simply resumed what they had been doing all along, laying down facts like bricks in a wall, one piece after another, tightening the frame around her legacy. Today's focus was money. They unveiled a financial audit tracing quiet payments between Diddy-owned companies and consulting firms used by Lopez's brand. On paper, they looked innocent. Advisory work, media management, logistics. But the amounts were staggeringly high, and the dates matched suspiciously with moments of legal cleanup. Settlements, legal threats that never became lawsuits, and vanishing footage. One memo, marked confidential, had a single line that now carried the weight of 1,000 whispers. handled quietly through her lane. Zero trace, zero exposure. The prosecution paused, turned to the jury. This is how silence gets built, they said. With money, with networks, with familiar faces doing familiar favors, just hidden deep enough so no one notices until it's too late. The gallery was frozen. Even the defense team had stopped shuffling their papers. And then, one final witness. A woman, early 30s, face protected by court order. She had been a house manager during one of Diddy's now infamous private retreats. She spoke gently, like someone exhausted by carrying a truth too long. One night, she said, J-Lo came with a small group. Nothing crazy, just her, a stylist, a bodyguard. She didn't say much. She walked straight to the studio room. The prosecutor asked what happened next. There was a moment. I remember it because everyone left the hallway. Her team cleared the floor. The blinds were pulled. Then Diddy arrived. They were in there for almost an hour. I wasn't supposed to be nearby, but I forgot my badge, so I waited around the corner. I heard one line clearly. It was her voice. She looked down, visibly shaken. If anything ever comes out, make sure I don't burn with you. The room gasped, not loudly, just enough to feel like the oxygen had been yanked out of it. The defense objected, claimed hearsay. The judge allowed the jury to weigh credibility, but admitted the statement into the record. And suddenly everything made sense. The meetings, the flights, the deleted texts, the whispered warnings, the carefully crafted silence. Jennifer Lopez wasn't just surviving near Diddy's world. She was navigating it, not always leading, but always aware. And that awareness in this courtroom was no longer invisible. The judge looked over the room. This case is not about spectacle, he said. It's about responsibility and what each person chooses to do or not do when faced with truth. As the session ended, Jennifer didn't speak. She didn't cry. She didn't run. She stood up, straightened her jacket, and walked out. No applause, no flashbulbs, just the echo of what silence sounds like when it finally runs out. And outside, as the press screamed questions and the world demanded answers, the truth whispered louder than ever. She wasn't on trial, but her silence had been. And in the end, it told a story no one would ever forget.